Well, something that never ceases to amaze me is what can happen in and through our lives when we're simply willing to take the next step. I mean, I never cease to be blown away by what can happen when instead of standing still or playing it safe, we take the next step. When instead of waiting until a decision makes sense, or instead of waiting until everyone in our lives is on board, or we feel like we're ready for something ourselves, we take the next step. When instead of just dreaming and planning and dreaming some more, we actually take the next step. For each of us, this looks completely different. I mean, for one person, taking the next step is making a phone call, or it's making a big ask. Maybe it's submitting a proposal, or it's applying for a job. And for the next person, it's maybe quitting a job that we've gotten comfortable in. While for the next person, it's maybe following through with the call that God has laid on our heart. It might be as simple as saying yes to something, or maybe it's saying no, and maybe, just maybe, it's continuing to be faithful right where we are. But once again, I just never cease to be amazed by the crazy, crazy things that can happen when we're simply willing to take the next step. Now, as a Christian and a follower of Jesus, we call this walking by faith, and God is added to the equation. And it's more about trusting God than we trust ourselves. But in the Bible, in chapter 11 of Hebrews, we're told story after story of people who are willing to take the next step and the crazy, crazy things that happen because of it. Like we're told that Noah, he took the next step and he built this large, crazy boat. And we're told that Moses and the Israelites literally took the next step and they walked through the Red Sea on dry ground. And because of it, they were no longer slaves, but they were now free. And we're even told that people conquered kingdoms, that they brought justice where there was none, that they shut the mouths of lions, and they even escaped the edge of the sword and death itself, all because they were willing to take the next step. Now, I know for myself, these stories are great and all, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not mentioned anywhere in the Bible. I mean, I have built a birdhouse or two, but you wouldn't want to ride on a boat if I built one myself, and I'm terrified, completely terrified of the mice that live underneath my shed in my backyard. That's no joke. And so you will not find me wrestling a lion anytime soon. And just in general, though, whether it's stories in the news or just seeing other people I know taking steps out and just being used for crazy things, for the longest time, I disqualified myself from doing anything personally. And I mean, also taking this next step is scary. Like, what if you fail? Or what if you make a fool of yourself? Like, what if you step out and you're told that you are no good? Not to mention, who am I? I'm bald, kind of awkward. I'm from a small town in South Dakota. I drive a crappy Chevy Aveo, and I'm pretty average at most things. I mean, seriously, who am I? And yet at some point, something changed inside of me, and I just decided, well, why not me? Like, why not me? And in that same chapter from Hebrews, it actually says that it's impossible to please God without faith, and I didn't want that. And more than anything, I probably just became foolish enough to take the next step without realizing just how crazy and outrageous something was. And again, when I look at my life, I'm blown away by what's happened when I've simply been willing to take the next step. I mean, even though I'm the very last person who ever should be a pastor, I now pastor a church that I started 10 years ago, and every single Sunday, we now have thousands of people that come. And it's one of the fastest growing churches in the country. It's crazy. And growing up, I used to hate books and hate reading. Even in high school at times, my mom would have to read a book out loud to me because I struggled to understand what I was reading. And now it's crazy, but I have a book deal through Penguin Random House, and my book comes out this March, and it's going to be in Barnes & Noble and every place else. It's outrageous. And even standing before you today is crazy, given that I was terrible at my speech class in high school, and in college I would get almost physically sick. It was like physically ill during my communications class. And I just say all of this, and I look at all these things and the other things that have happened simply because I've been willing to take the next step. And again, it's just crazy. It's outrageous. I honestly can't believe it myself. Now, here's what's cool, though, and here's what's truly powerful. It's one thing to take the next step ourselves, and I've found it's another thing altogether to help others take the next step. You see, the truth is I became a pastor because of another pastor here in town, in Watertown, South Dakota, named Roger Spar. As a junior in high school, Roger asked me and a couple of my friends to come up front on a Sunday and share about a conference that we had attended. And something that I will never forget, after sharing that morning, Roger came up to me after the service was done, and he just said, "Adam, I just want you to know that you may have a gift. You may have a gift that you've been given." It wasn't until years later that I realized the impact his words had on me and how he was helping me to take the next step. And with the book deal, I didn't want to write a book. I actually thought it was a terrible idea. I had zero desire to do so, but it was a friend of mine who was an author who challenged me to write, and when I told him no, he didn't listen. He didn't listen. Instead, he got me a phone call with his agent, which I didn't know was one of the best agents in the country, and that phone call is what would lead me to writing a book. Again, it's one thing to take the next step ourselves, and it's another thing altogether to help someone else take the next step. And with all this, I can't help but wonder what crazy awesome things that I've missed out because I haven't been willing to take the next step myself. And in this room alone, what crazy awesome things have all of you missed out because you simply haven't been willing to take the next step. And my hope for all of us, and really my prayer for all of us, is that from this day forward, with whatever it is, big or small, that we'd always, always, always be willing to take the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. Thank you.